Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Sky by C.G. Jung, read aloud. Chapter 5, UFOs Considered in a Non-Psychological Light. As I said at the beginning, it was the purpose of this essay to treat the UFOs primarily as a psychological phenomenon. There are plenty of reasons for this. It is abundantly clear from the contradictory and impossible assertions made by the rumor. It is quite right that they should be met with criticism, skepticism, and open rejection, and if anyone should see behind them nothing more than a phantasm that deranges the minds of people and engenders rationalistic resistance, they would have nothing but our sympathy. Indeed, since conscious and unconscious fantasy and even mendacity obviously play an important role in building up the rumor, we could be satisfied with the psychological explanation and let it rest at that. Unfortunately, however, there are good reasons why the UFOs cannot be disposed of in this simple matter. So far as I know, it remains an established fact, supported by numerous observations, that UFOs have not only been seen visually, but also been picked up by the radar screen and have left traces on the photographic plate. I base myself here not only on the comprehensive reports by Ruppelt and Keyhole, which leave no room for doubt in this regard, but also on the fact that the astrophysicist, Professor Manzel, has not succeeded, despite all his efforts, in offering a satisfying scientific explanation of even one authentic UFO report. It boils down to nothing less than this: that either psychic projections throw back a radar echo, or else the appearance of real objects affords an opportunity for mythological projections. Here I must remark that even if the UFOs are physically real, the corresponding psychic projections are not actually caused, but only occasioned by them. Mythical statements of this kind have always occurred whether UFOs exist or not. These statements depend, in the first place, on the peculiar nature of the psychic background, the collective unconscious, and for this reason have always been projected in some form. At various times, all sorts of other projections have appeared in the heavens beside the saucers. This particular projection, together with its psychological content, the rumor, is specific of our age and highly characteristic of it. The dominating idea of a mediator and a god who became man after having thrust the old polytheistic beliefs into the background is now in its turn on the point of evaporating. Untold millions of so-called Christians have lost their belief in a real, living mediator, while the believers endeavor to make their belief credible to primitive people, when it would be so much more fruitful to bestow these much-needed efforts on their own people. But it is always so much easier and more affecting to talk and act down to people instead of up to them. St. Peter spoke to the populace of Athens and Rome, but what is Albert Schweitzer doing in Lambriani? People like him are needed much more urgently in Europe. No Christian will contest the importance of a belief that of the mediator, nor will they deny the consequences of the loss it entails. So powerful an idea reflects a profound psychic need, which does not simply disappear when the expression of it ceases to be valid. What happens to the energy that once kept the idea alive and dominate over the psyche? A political, social, philosophical, and religious conflict of unprecedented proportions has split the consciousness of our age. When such tremendous opposites split asunder, we may expect with certainty that the need for a savior will make itself felt. Experience has amply confirmed that, in the psyche as in nature, the attention of opposites creates a potential, which may express itself at any time in a manifestation of energy. Between above and below flows the waterfall. Between hot and cold there is a turbulent exchange of molecules. Similarly, between the psychic opposites there is generated a uniting symbol, a first unconsciousness. This process is running its course in the unconscious of modern people. Between the opposites there arises spontaneously a symbol of unity and wholeness, no matter whether it reaches consciousness or not. Should something extraordinary or impressive then occur in the outside world, be it a human personality, a thing, or an idea, the unconscious contact can project itself upon it, thereby investing the projection carrier with numinous and mythical powers. Thanks to its numinosity, the projection carrier has a highly suggestive effort and grows into a savior myth, whose basic features have been repeated countless times. The impetus for the manifestation of the latest psychic contents was given by the UFO. The only thing we know with tolerable certainty about UFOs is that they possess a surface which can be seen by the eye and at the same time throws back a radar echo. Everything else is so uncertain that it must remain for the time being an unproven conjecture or rumor until we know more about it. We do not know either whether they are manned machines or a species of living creature which has appeared in our atmosphere from an unknown source. It is not likely they are a meteoric phenomenon, since their behavior does not give the impression of a process that could be interpreted into physical terms. Their movements indicated volition and psychic readiness, e.g., evasion and flight, perhaps even aggression and defense. The progression in space is not in a straight line and of constant velocity like a meteor, but erratic, the flight of an insect or a varying velocity from 0 to several thousand miles per hour. The observed speeds and angles of turn are such that no earthly being could survive them any more than they could survive the enormous heat generated by friction. So simultaneous visual and radar sightings would be themselves a satisfactory proof of their reality. Unfortunately, well-authenticated reports show that there are also cases where the eye sees nothing that does not appear on the radar screen, or where an object undoubtedly picked up by a radar is not seen by the eye. I will not mention other, even more remarkable reports from authoritative sources. They are so bizarre that they tax our understanding and credulity to the limit. If these things are real, and by all human standards it hardly seems possible to doubt this any longer, then we are left with only two hypotheses: that their weightlessness on the one hand and their psychic nature on the other. This is a question I, for one, cannot decide. In the circumstances, however, it seems to me advisable at least to investigate the psychological aspect of the phenomenon, so as to throw a little light on the complicated situation. I have limited myself to only a few examples. Unfortunately, after more than 10 years' study of the problem, I have not managed to collect a sufficient number of observations from which more reliable conclusions can be drawn. I must therefore content myself with having sketched out a few lines for future research. Of course, next to nothing has been gained as regards the psychical explanation of the phenomenon. But the psychic aspect plays so great a role that it cannot be left out of account. The discussion of it, as I have tried to show, leads to psychological problems which involve just as fantastic possibilities or impossibilities as the approach from the physical side. If military authorities have felt compelled to set up bureaus for collecting and evaluating UFO reports, then psychology, too, has not only the right but also the duty to do what it can to shed light on this dark problem. The question of anti-gravity is one which I must leave to the physics, who alone can inform us with chances of success what chance of success such a hypothesis has. The alternative hypothesis that UFOs are something psychic that is equipped with certain physical properties seems even less probable, for where should such a thing come from? If weightlessness is a hard hypothesis to swallow, then the notion of materialized psychism opens a bottomless void under our feet. Parapsychology is, of course, acquainted with the fact of materialization, but this phenomenon depends on the presence of one or more mediums who exude a weightable substance, and it occurs only in their immediate environment. The psyche can move the body, but only inside the living organism. that something psychic possessing material qualities and with a high charge of energy could appear by itself high in the air at a great distance from any human medium, this surpasses our comprehension. Here our knowledge leaves us completely in the lurch, and it is therefore pointless to speculate any further in this direction. It seems to me, speaking with all due reserve, that there is a third possibility, that UFOs are real material phenomena of an unknown nature, presumably coming from outer space, which perhaps have long been visible to human, but otherwise have had no recognizable connection with the earth or its inhabitants. In recent times, however, and just at the moment with the eyes of human turned towards heaven, partly on account of their fantasies about possible spaceships, and partly in a figurative sense because of their earthly existence feels threatened, unconscious contacts have projected themselves on these inexplicable heavenly phenomena and given them a significance that they in no way deserve. Since they seem to have appeared more frequently after the Second World War than before, it may be that they are synchronistic phenomena or meaningful coincidences. The psychic situation of humans and the UFO phenomenon as a physical reality bear no recognizable causal relationship to one another, but they seem to coincide in a meaningful manner. The meaningful connection is the product, on the one hand, of the projection, and on the other, of the round and cylindrical forms which embody the projected meaning and have always symbolized the union of opposites. Another equally chance coincidence is the choice of the national emblems of the aircraft in the USSR and the USA, respectively a red and white five-pointed star. For 1,000 years, red was regarded as the masculine and white as the feminine color. The alchemists spoke of the Cervus Rubius, the red slave, and the Femina Candida, the white woman. Their copulation produced the supreme union of opposites. When one speaks of Russia, one immediately thinks of, quote, Little Father Tsar and, quote, Little Father Stalin. One also remembers all the talk about America being a matriarchy because the bulk of American capital is in the hands of women, and not to mention Kaiserling's bon mot about the aunt of the nation. It is clear that these parallels have nothing to do with the choice of symbols, but, at any rate, not on a conscious causality. Or anyway, not on a conscious causality. Comically enough, one must say, red and white are the nuptial colors. They throw an amusing light on Soviet Russia as the reluctant and unrequited lover of the Femina Candida in the White House, even if there is nothing more to it than that.